Hello friends, welcome to Ch-3. In this video, we'll be talking about the graphical aspect of linear equations. Let's start. Now, when we are talking about the graphical aspect, we will take into consideration two variables and two equations. Or we will start off with two variables, one equation. And then we talk about the graphical aspect. But something that is important to plot the graphs is the concept of coordinate geometry. So in a certain sense, we will be introducing some concepts of coordinate geometry here when we are plotting the graphs on the Cartesian plane. Now when we say a Cartesian plane, we are basically referring to the real x-axis and the real y-axis. Okay? Okay. So now starting off with, so as discussed, we can basically start off with, let us say I start off with ax plus c is equal to a 0. So let us say this is the first variety that I want to plot. So we have taken a single equation in a single variable, right? Second, I can take an equation like ax plus by plus c is equal to a 0, which is just like I want to plot a single equation in two variables on the real xy plane. But before I do this, there is another variety that I can give for this, and the another variety here is, let's put this as 3, which is just like saying by plus c is equal to a 0. Now this is, again, we are talking about a single equation in a single variable only, but here we have taken a different variable. So we will first try and plot these values on the xy plane with the help of the coordinate concept. So now when I am talking about the first equation, and the first equation here is ax plus c is equal to a 0. Now the moment I equate a linear expression to a 0, that means I am talking about the zeros of the linear equation. So the point to be understood here is I can always equate, on one side I can write on one linear expression, on the other side I can talk about another linear expression, and then I can talk about the number of zeros. But the number of zeros will come to any linear equation only when one side of it, which is either the left hand side or the right hand side of the equal to sign, has the variable form of equation and the other side is purely equated to a 0. It is then only we talk about finding out the zeros of any equation, whether it is linear, quadratic, cubic or polynomial. Okay, so here we are talking about that. So finding out the 0 here, I'll say the 0 here is equal to minus c by a only when a is a non-zero. So something that we had discussed in our earlier videos also, whenever you are forming a linear equation, you have to ensure that the coefficient of the variable raised to the power 1 should be a non-zero term, right? It should be a non-zero number value. Okay, so now let us see how to plot this. So let us say this is the positive side of y-axis, this is the negative side of y-axis. Let's say this is the positive side of x-axis and this is the negative side of x-axis. Now we know that on y-axis there is no scope for x coordinate. There is no scope for the value of x on the y-axis. Similarly, you can say that there is no scope for y on the x-axis. So there is no scope for x on the y-axis and there is no scope for y on the x-axis. So here we are referring to something which is x is equal to something, and you know that the entire y-axis is termed as x is equal to 0, as we discussed a few seconds back. So this will be a sort of a line which will be parallel to your y-axis. So let's say this is x is equal to minus c by a. Now you'll be curious to know that now x, you are getting a negative value, right? Since you are getting a negative value, in that case, and you are taking the positive side of it, how will I get a positive case here? So you will get a positive value only when one of these would be negative. Now when you say only when one of these would be negative, what are we referring to? So when this x has to be positive, for x to be positive, in that case either c has to be positive with a being less than 0, or c has to be negative and a is positive. That doesn't make any difference. You just need to understand it like this, that one of these constant terms, I mean these are the coefficients, one of these constant terms need to be positive and the other needs to be negative, is what we are talking about. Similarly, on this side, so we will be getting x is equal to minus c by a. Now here this side x has to be negative. Now when x has to be negative, so you will get minus c by a only when c by a is positive. That means both of them should have the same sign. I mean both of them should either be positive or both of them should be at the same time, they should be negative. Then only you will get, you can draw this line. And please keep in mind that the line that you are drawing should be a straight line which is parallel to the y-axis. Okay, talking about the third case that we were talking about, which is by plus c is equal to a 0. Now in this case you get what? Y is equal to minus c by b, and at the same time you will have to say that b also needs to be a non-zero term, otherwise it will no longer be a linear equation. Once you have said this, now you know that the entire x-axis is just like saying y is equal to a 0. So this line that you are supposed to draw, you know that it is a line, as we had discussed in the earlier video. Now when you are drawing this line needs to be parallel to the x-axis. So let us say this is y is equal to minus c by b. Here also you are saying this y is equal to minus c by b. Now you need to keep this thing in mind when you are saying that now here the value of x is positive, here the value of x is negative, here the value of y is positive, and here the value of y is negative. So doing the same discussion now for y. So if y has to be positive, you say the same. You say at a time one of them has to be positive and the other one has to be negative at a time. So if c is positive, b has to be negative. And now if y has to be negative, in that case both of them have to have the same sign. Both of them need to have the same sign, which is just like saying c is positive, b is positive, along with c is negative, so is b. This is just like we are talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 different quadrants, and then you are talking about B and C, right? Now if I were to talk about, let's say if I in my earlier video we had basically talked about where would B and C be negative, that you need to find out now. Once you know that now this is the first quadrant, this is the second quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant, then you can accordingly find out the values of A and C, which at this level may not be required. Now once you know the 4 lines that you have formed, they will cut at right angles, I mean they will intersect at right angles. What is the resultant figure that you are going to get with the help of these 4 lines? Why 4 lines? Because you are getting one case, you are getting, let's say x is equal to plus c by a, because eventually this gets converted into plus c by a, x is equal to minus c by a, y is equal to plus c by b, and then we are talking about y is equal to minus c by b. So these 4 lines, when they intersect each other, they will be intersecting one another at right angles first, and then the resultant figure that will be formed here will be either a square or a rectangle. Why do we call it as a square? We will call this as a square only when this will also be written as ay plus c and ax plus c. If a is not equal to b, in that case the resultant figure that will be formed here will be a rectangle. right? This is talking about one of them. Now maybe the last discussion here. So if I say ax plus by plus c is equal to a 0, right? Okay, now in this case, let us say I want to find out. So what were we finding out? Here we were finding out the zeros. So here we had found out the zeros. Here also we can find out the zeros. So in a linear equation, zeros are nothing but real roots, and they are nothing but real xy intercepts. So now in this equation, we have taken only one equation with two variables. In this equation, if I put x is equal to 0, or you can say if x is equal to a 0, then the value of y comes out to be how much? Minus c by b, right? At the same time, if I say if y is equal to 0, then I get the value of x as how much? Minus c by a. Correct? Now when I am putting x is equal to 0, I am getting the y-intercept. This is nothing but the real y-intercept. And here when I am talking about this, I am getting the real x-intercept, or the real value, the real root, or the 0. This is the real 0 of y. This is the real 0 of x. The real root, or the 0 of x and the 0 of y. 0 of x, 0 of y. Okay. Now the next thing that you need to understand after this is how to plot this. So as learnt here, now when I am plotting this, here we knew that this line is y-axis, wherein my x coordinate is equal to a 0 here, and this is my x-axis where my y coordinate is equal to a 0. So when y is equal to 0, you are getting the value of x as minus c by a. Now plotting it in the real sense. In the real sense means, here I know that x has to be negative on this side. This will be negative only when c and a have the same sign. Okay. And then you are getting the value of y as minus c by b. Let's say you are getting the value of y here as minus c by b. You join these 2 points with the help of a straight line, and this is the line that you get. Similarly, take symmetric values. Here you can take this as plus c by b, take this as maybe equidistant value, symmetric value, as minus c by a. Join these 2 points, join these 2 points, join these 2 points. So now this line will be parallel to this line, and this line will be parallel to this. So what we are talking about is, let us say if this is A, this point is B, this point is C, and this point is D. Can I say that AB is parallel to CD? Yes. And at the same time we are saying AD is parallel to BC. So quickly we talked about 3 different types of equations and their plotting on the real xy plane in order to find out the real roots or the zeros or the real x-intercepts and the real xy-intercepts. Please revise this, and then as a matter of practice, please plot these 4. Minus x minus 1 that we had talked about in the first video. Minus x plus 1. Plot these 4 lines on the same graph and see the resultant figure that you are getting will be what? Find out the resultant figure that you are getting will be what, and please put it in the comment section so that we can help you out with the answer. If you think that this video was really informative and it helps you a lot in terms of linear equations and the graphical presentation of linear equations, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. If you have already done so, click on the bell icon and select all so that you get regular updates from us. If you want us to do some specific videos, put it in the comment section so that we can do it for you. Thank you so much. Until next we meet, goodbye.